Okay, let's dive straight into this explainer. The burden of the dream leader. Have you ever woken up from a dream so epic and honestly so wildly bizarre that your heart was just hammering in your chest? Well, today we are breaking down a highly intense, incredibly fast-paced dream log that visualizes the crushing weight of responsibility in ways you literally wouldn't believe.
If you die, this world ends. I mean, talk about pressure, right? That is a literal life-or-death ultimatum thrown at the dreamer during the absolute peak climax of this log. The fate of the entire world rests squarely on one person's shoulders. But here is the crazy part. This totally apocalyptic, high-stakes finale actually starts off in the most mundane, slightly awkward situation imaginable. Let's rewind the clock to the very beginning. Because believe it or not, it all started with a barbecue. The battle for the end of the world kicks off with a totally simple plan to grill some meat at the dreamer's family home. It's this hilarious, massive juxtaposition between a desperate, world-ending climax and a wildly ordinary setup. At this point in the dream, our guy has absolutely no clue he's about to become the savior of the world. But you know how dreams are. Things start to get just a little bit weird right out of the gate. He invites two distant acquaintances from middle and high school, guys he shared a club with but never actually hung out with. Kind of an awkward dynamic for sure. They're taking a light truck up the mountain, but someone has to ride in the back. And for some reason, they want to avoid the police, so they hide one of the friends under a green tarp. It's that bizarre, low-stakes logic that only makes sense when you're dreaming. So he's just carefully driving up this steep hill, stressing about his buddy in the back. A quirky, everyday scenario. Now mapping out the timeline reveals the insane speed of the dream's escalation. At minute 1, they're just driving a light truck up a hill. By minute 3, the peak of the mountain has abruptly transformed into an endless, raging ocean, literally out of nowhere. And in just 5 dream minutes, a casual drive turns into a full-on nautical nightmare where they are suddenly boarding a massive luxury ship.
So what he finds at the peak is this violent, endless sea with tsunami-like waves towering dozens of meters into the air. And anchored right there is a giant luxury cruise ship, complete with these weird roof cottages. But here is the truly absurd, dreamlike contradiction. There are hundreds of diverse passengers lounging around on nylon sofas on a plastic wood deck, just totally relaxing, while a torrential storm is pouring down on them.
While he's standing there, completely baffled as to why no one is running for shelter from these massive waves, a friend behind him casually drops this line, "Your orders are needed. They can't move without them." Boom. Just like that, the dreamer realizes he is the captain. He is now completely responsible for his 15 friends and hundreds of random passengers. This is the core thematic anchor of the entire dream, this inescapable, incredibly heavy thrust of responsibility dumped right into his lap.
So now that he's the captain, he desperately needs to get everyone inside, right? But this is where the terrifying dream architecture kicks in. The process to enter the cabin is ridiculously convoluted and genuinely dangerous. He has to pull and shift this heavy metal rod on the roof, extend a narrow, leather-like corridor straight out over a sheer drop to the ocean, and then have everyone climb down to a sea-level entrance. The passengers literally have to jump onto this swaying, wildly unstable corridor just to get inside. It's terrifying. In fact, a young foreign boy actually slips and falls, but miraculously survives and claws his way back up.
Contrasting sharply with the absolute chaos of the storm outside, the inside of the ship is incredibly cozy. We're talking a warm room bathed in bright orange light, completely filled with comfortable sofas, futons, and a massive kitchen. The dreamer is just laser-focused on his new role, serving warm food to the freezing passengers so they can forget the cold. And just as everyone finally starts to relax, one passenger stands up and delivers this passionate, dramatic speech setting up their next destination. The target, the legendary rock walls of Argentina. Fast forward and they finally arrive in sunny Argentina, hyped and ready for that epic yakiniku barbecue with booze. And this perfectly illustrates the ultimate false resolution of a dream, where your expectations are just completely shattered by reality. Instead of a massive, glorious feast, they are all sitting around eating cheap, ordinary Japanese bento out of thin plastic containers. The dreamer is so stressed about entertaining his guests that no one is drinking, the conversation is super forced, and he is just beyond frustrated.
Sensing his growing frustration, one of his friends casually turns to him and says, "You don't have to worry. You are the leader." That single phrase is the trigger. The peaceful, sunny mountain scene in Argentina is instantly, violently shattered the second those words are spoken.
In a flash, the world becomes a horrifying wasteland. The lush green trees instantly die off, and the earth is completely smothered in thick, gray volcanic ash. The passengers have retreated to the ship, leaving the dreamer and 5 of his classmates utterly alone in this apocalyptic landscape. Now they have no choice but to push forward to the ultimate peak to confront whatever caused this destruction.
The tension really builds as they approach the summit. Picture this. In an entire sea of gray volcanic ash, there is only one single green tree left alive, and it's surrounded by these strangely tall weeds. To even get to it, they have to crawl on weak wooden planks across a terrifyingly frail vine bridge. It is a desperate, high-stakes crawl toward the very last sign of life in a totally dead world.
And there she is, the final antagonist. But it's not some towering, fire-breathing monster. It's the Green Girl. She's this bizarre entity about the size of Peter Pan. She has green skin, but human-like textures and clothes. Just like a video game boss, this tiny creature is somehow responsible for the volcanic ash, the raging seas, and essentially, the end of the world.
They try to treat this encounter like a coordinated video game strategy, but things spiral out of control so fast. The girl attacks with these lightning-fast vines from outside the fence. First, the vines tightly bind the dreamer's left arm, then they whip around his right. He frantically manages to break free and yells for a retreat, but as he turns around, it's too late. His 5 friends are completely and hopelessly bound head to toe by the vines.
In a moment of sheer, unadulterated panic, the dreamer leaps into the air and deploys this wildly bizarre escape mechanism. A set of human-sized airplane wings with a propeller just magically appears right on his back, and he begins to float slowly up into the sky. But down below, a massive plant shaped almost like a giant tribal plate rises up from the ground, permanently sealing his friends inside. From inside the plant, completely immobilized and trapped, his friends look up at him and scream that ultimate defining line, "You are the leader, you must escape." It is the ultimate sacrifice. They know that if the leader survives, the world survives. They are literally giving up their lives just to ensure he gets away.
What follows is this incredibly cinematic, suspenseful escape. We hear the furious, manic screams of the Green Girl echoing below. "Where are you? Where are you?" She is frantically scouring the ground, searching everywhere for him, but she completely misses the fact that he is just slowly, silently floating away in the sky right above her head.
Navigating through the dead, ash-covered trees on his fragile wings, he finally spots the luxury ship anchored about 3 kilometers away. But the ocean is raging violently once again, and, in a totally cruel twist of dream logic, the torrential rain is falling exclusively over the terrified passengers waiting on the ship. The dreamer is flying back, carrying the intense, crushing anxiety of leaving his friends behind, racing toward the people who are still desperately depending on him.
So what is the crucial point here? It's the psychological through line that ties all this unbelievable chaos together, the crushing burden of leadership. From the everyday, mundane anxiety of hosting a simple barbecue to caring for freezing strangers, and finally to literally bearing the survival of the actual world, the unconscious mind took the feeling of being responsible for others and morphed it into a grotesque, inescapable, and epic trial.
Even after waking up, the dreamer just couldn't shake the image of the ash, the ocean, and the screaming girl. Which brings us to a question for all of you. What burdens are you carrying in the waking world that follow you into the dark? Your daily responsibilities, those minor anxieties, how might your mind be twisting them into raging oceans tonight? That's all for this explainer. Catch you next time.